The Pacific jungles in 1942 smelled of rot and smoke. The air was heavy with humidity, clinging to uniforms, dampening rifles, making every step a slog. For the Japanese soldiers who marched through the undergrowth, confidence still burned hot. They had swept across the Pacific in a wave, taking island after island, humbling Western forces who had seemed unprepared for the ferocity of their advance. Around campfires at night, they joked about the Americans. They laughed at the supposed softness of the enemy, at the clumsy equipment, at the small sidearms carried by officers. In particular, they mocked the pistols. To the Japanese mind, sidearms were symbols of prestige, not battlefield power. Their Nambu pistols, modelled after European designs, were elegant, sleek, but notoriously underpowered and prone to misfires. Yet when they saw captured American pistols, the laughter grew louder. The Colt 45 looked heavy, bulky, primitive. Its recoil was said to be monstrous, the grip too large for smaller hands. "A farmer's gun," one soldier jeered. "They think size means power." Others passed it around, pulling the slide, scoffing at its weight. "One shot and it flies from your hand," they joked. But beneath the laughter was arrogance, the belief that the Americans were clumsy oafs relying on oversized tools. Against the steel and discipline of the Imperial Army, how could such crude weapons matter? The first encounter changed everything. A squad of Japanese infantry stalked an American patrol near Guadalcanal. They moved with practiced stealth, rifles at the ready, bayonets gleaming. The Americans stumbled noisily, their boots crunching leaves. Easy prey. Gunfire erupted, an ambush. The Americans scattered, returning fire with rifles and BARs. In the chaos, Sergeant Daniel Miller, sidearm drawn, found himself face to face with a charging soldier. Miller had no time to see his rifle. He squeezed the trigger of his Colt. The crack split the air. The .45 slug punched into the Japanese soldier's chest, knocking him backward with brutal force. He crumpled instantly, eyes wide in shock. Miller fired again, and another soldier dropped, the heavy round tearing through foliage and flesh alike. The firefight lasted minutes, but to the survivors it felt eternal. When silence fell, the jungle was littered with bodies, and among them 2 men felled not by rifles, not by machine guns, but by a pistol the Japanese had laughed at hours before. Whispers spread quickly through the ranks. "The American pistol, it kills with one shot." Soldiers who had once sneered at its size now looked at it with wary eyes. The weapon's reputation. Back at American camps, the Colt 45 was not laughed at. It was respected, trusted. Issued widely since World War I, the M1911 design had earned loyalty among US soldiers. It was not sleek, but it was reliable. Its 45 ACP cartridge carried massive stopping power, designed after the failures of smaller calibers in earlier wars. American officers told stories of Moro fighters in the Philippines who had shrugged off weaker bullets, hence the demand for a sidearm that could end a fight with one round. The Colt delivered. Heavy, yes. Recoil strong, yes. But in practiced hands, it was a weapon that made men pause. Soldiers in foxholes cleaned it with care, carried spare magazines, and whispered the same phrase, "It won't let you down." Japanese propaganda scoffed. But in the field, the laughter grew uneasy. Reports trickled back. Men dropped with a single hit, wounds gaping, bodies thrown down as if struck by a hammer. A pistol that could rival a rifle in close combat. It seemed impossible. A duel at night. One night near Bougainville, the truth struck harder. An American officer, cut off from his unit, stumbled into a Japanese foxhole line. A young Japanese lieutenant confronted him, Nambu pistol drawn. The two froze, weapons raised. In the silence, crickets chirped, the jungle holding its breath. The lieutenant smirked. "Your pistol is too heavy," he said in broken English. "One shot, you drop it." The American said nothing. His Colt hung steady in his hand. The lieutenant fired first. The Nambu cracked, the bullet slicing past the officer's shoulder. The American squeezed his trigger. The Colt roared like thunder. The lieutenant's body jerked as the 45 round struck center mass. He fell without another sound. The officer exhaled, gripping the pistol tighter. He retrieved the fallen Nambu, examining its light frame, its weak recoil spring. He dropped it in disgust, holstering his Colt again. The story spread quickly. Men whispered it in dugouts, in trenches, in passing conversations. Even Japanese survivors admitted the Colt did not miss. In the months to come, more such stories piled up. Marines clearing bunkers used Colts when rifles were too long. Soldiers cornered in ambushes drew Colts and ended fights with 2 quick shots. And each time, Japanese soldiers who once mocked the weapon saw comrades collapse under its power. By 1943, the laughter was gone. In its place was respect and fear. The jungle was not kind to weapons. Rifles clogged with mud. Machine guns jammed in the rain. Ammunition swelled in the damp, failing when most needed. Yet through it all, the Colt 45 kept firing. Among U.S. Marines, the pistol became more than a sidearm. It became a symbol, a steel reassurance when rifles ran dry, when grenades were gone, when the fight narrowed to arm's reach. Men carried it not as an afterthought, but as insurance. In the foxholes of Guadalcanal, men would run their thumbs along the pistol's grip as others smoked cigarettes. "She'll speak when she has to," they said. Japanese soldiers, by contrast, clutched their Nambus nervously. The 8mm round lacked bite, often failing to stop an opponent even with multiple hits. Stories circulated of American soldiers taking 2, even 3 bullets from a Nambu before rushing forward, bayonet raised. Meanwhile, the Colt earned whispers of ending fights with 1 squeeze. The battle at the river crossing. At a narrow river crossing in New Georgia, the legend deepened. A platoon of Marines stumbled into an ambush, Japanese rifles firing from concealed positions. Gunfire shattered the air, leaves ripped apart, men dropping into the water. Corporal James Harris found himself chest-deep in the river, rifle jammed from the mud. Across the bank, a Japanese soldier rose from cover, bayonet glinting. Harris yanked his Colt free, water streaming off the steel. He aimed and fired. The 45 round struck with brutal force. The soldier collapsed mid-stride, tumbling into the reeds. Another appeared, shouting, charging. Harris fired again. The second man dropped, the sound echoing like a drumbeat over the chaos. Marines around him cheered, voices rising even as bullets whined overhead. "The Colt speaks," one shouted. Word spread quickly after the battle. Harris had held the crossing with nothing but his sidearm, cutting down enemies as if the jungle itself had armed him. To the Japanese, the story spread with darker tones. Survivors muttered about the pistol that dropped men as if invisible hammers struck them. Around campfires, young recruits listened in fear. "Beware the American's Colt," veterans warned. "A weapon of fear. Weapons are not just steel. They are stories." And the Colt's stories grew by the week. Marines told of clearing bunkers, the pistol booming in confined spaces, echoing like thunder. Army soldiers wrote home of duels in the dark, when the 45's flash was the last light an enemy saw. One Marine, Private Walker, told a tale that circulated widely. He claimed he had cornered 3 Japanese soldiers in a hut. With his rifle empty, he drew his Colt. 3 shots, 3 bodies. When pressed, Walker shrugged. "It ain't me, it's the gun." Whether true or not, such stories mattered. They hardened American confidence and eroded Japanese morale. Even men who had never seen a Colt fired came to believe in its myth. Comparison of pistols, Japanese soldiers had no such faith in their sidearms. The Nambu pistol, with its weak spring and fragile parts, was derided even by its users. Magazines jammed, firing pins snapped. Its small round lacked stopping power. Officers carried them as badges of rank, not as tools of survival. When Japanese troops captured Colts, they tested them in secret. The recoil was strong, yes, but the effect was undeniable. One soldier wrote in a diary found later, "The American pistol is heavy and ugly, but it strikes like lightning. Ours are toys compared to it." Another note, scribbled in the margins of a pocket manual, simply read, "Do not underestimate the Colt." Close combat. On Tarawa, where the fighting shrank to brutal hand-to-hand clashes, the Colt's reputation became cemented. Marines storming bunkers often had no room for rifles. Grenades cleared entrances, but inside it was pistol against bayonet. Sir Giant Michael O'Connor recalled bursting into a dugout, flashlight in one hand, Colt in the other. 2 Japanese soldiers lunged at him. He fired twice, the blast deafening in the enclosed space. When the smoke cleared, both men lay still. O'Connor's men swore by it afterward. The pistol had saved them all. The Japanese survivors of Tarawa carried home grim tales. Men spoke of comrades dropped instantly, of thick bullets that punched through bamboo walls. "The Colt is not a pistol," one officer reportedly told his men. "It is a cannon small enough for a hand." Psychological warfare. Fear is its own weapon. By 1944, the Colt was no longer just a tool. It was a presence. Japanese soldiers, who once mocked its size, now flinched at its sight. Some prisoners admitted during interrogations that they dreaded close combat with Americans, not because of rifles, but because of the pistol's power. One Marine officer noticed this shift. After capturing prisoners on Saipan, he watched as they eyed his holstered Colt nervously, refusing to meet its shadow. He told his men, "They fear this more than our tanks." American propaganda did not need to exaggerate. The enemy's fear became the advertisement. Posters circulated among troops reminding them of their pistol's power. Manuals repeated the phrase, "One shot, one stop." Legacy growing. By the time U.S. forces pushed toward the Philippines, the Colt 45 was legendary on both sides. American soldiers carried it with pride. Japanese soldiers spoke of it with hushed voices, as if naming a curse. What began as laughter had turned into silence, then respect, then dread. The jungle had proven one truth. In war, reputation can kill as surely as steel. And the Colt's reputation was carved not in myths alone, but in bodies that fell with a single thunderous shot. By late 1944, the Pacific Campaign had shifted. No longer were Japanese troops advancing with confidence. Now they defended island after island, dug into caves and tunnels, fighting with desperation. The laughter that once echoed through their ranks, laughter about American softness, about clumsy weapons, about the oversized Colt pistol, was gone. Whispers replaced it. Whispers of the heavy American sidearm that dropped men with one shot. Whispers of Marines storming bunkers with pistols drawn, their thunderous cracks echoing in confined spaces. Whispers that grew into fear. Manila streets. In the battle for Manila in 1945, the Colt's reputation reached its peak. Urban warfare turned alleys into killing zones. Rifles were powerful but cumbersome inside narrow buildings. Soldiers clearing stairwells holstered their M1 Garands and drew Colts. Private First Class Leonard Davis recalled one such moment. His squad advanced into a shattered house, floors sagging, smoke curling through bullet holes. Suddenly, from the shadows, 2 Japanese soldiers lunged. Davis fired his Colt at point-blank range. The roar filled the room. Both attackers collapsed before they could swing their bayonets. Later, Davis admitted, "If I had only my rifle, I'd have been dead. The Colt saved me. It saved all of us." Word of encounters like this spread across units. Soldiers trusted their rifles for long fights, But when it came to close survival, they turned instinctively to the Colt. Captured Japanese soldiers, when interrogated, sometimes admitted their dread of the weapon. One prisoner confessed through an interpreter, "We laughed at it before the war. We said it was too big, too heavy. But I saw a man shot in the chest, and he died before he hit the ground. We did not laugh again." Another prisoner described the fear of close combat. "The Colt was like thunder in your face. The man holding ours needed only one shot. We needed many." Such testimonies baffled Allied officers. How could a sidearm inspire more dread than machine guns or artillery? But they overlooked the psychology. The machine gun was impersonal, the artillery distant. The Colt was intimate. It was man against man, and it ended fights in a heartbeat. Comparisons that hurt. Japanese soldiers compared their Nambu pistols with bitterness. Many called them unreliable. Stories circulated of Nambus jamming, of magazines falling out, of shots failing to stop charging Marines. Some even nicknamed the pistol the jam gun. In contrast, the Colt's flaws became part of its legend. Yes, it kicked like a mule. Yes, it was heavy. But those very qualities reinforced its myth. This was not a pistol for the weak. It was a weapon for men who needed certainty in the chaos of war. By the time of Okinawa in 1945, both sides understood the Colt's place in the war. Americans carried it with quiet pride. Japanese troops braced themselves when they saw its squared silhouette on a soldier's hip. In caves where rifles could not swing, Marines fired Colts at shadows. In tunnels where grenades were too dangerous, the .45 barked like a cannon, its echoes rolling through stone passages. Survivors remembered the sound more than the sight. One Japanese diary, recovered after the battle, held a chilling line. "The American pistol is a demon. It kills men as easily as stepping on ants." When Japan finally surrendered in August 1945, the war ended. But the stories of the Colt did not. Veterans carried them home. Some tucked them away in drawers, reminders of nights when one shot had made the difference between life and death. Others passed them to sons, who would later carry them into new wars. The weapon became legend not only for what it did, but for how it was remembered. Soldiers spoke of it with reverence. "The Colt never failed me," they would say. In mess halls, in reunions, in faded letters, the same phrase echoed. The legend did not stop with WWII. In Korea, American troops still strapped Colts to their hips. In Vietnam, young soldiers carried the same sidearm their fathers had trusted, its design unchanged, its reputation intact. Even as newer pistols entered service, the Colt .45 remained the standard by which all were judged. Its story had been written in the jungles of Guadalcanal, the caves of Saipan, the streets of Manila. The legacy of fear. For Japanese veterans who survived, memories of the Colt were often unspoken but never forgotten. In interviews decades later, some admitted how deeply the weapon unsettled them. One elderly soldier recalled, "We were told Americans were weak, but their pistol was not weak. It was stronger than ours, stronger than we imagined. It made us fear close combat." Others described the humiliation of seeing comrades fall with a single shot, while their own pistols sputtered uselessly. History often measures war by tanks, by bombers, by fleets of ships, but sometimes the weight of a war can be felt in something smaller, a pistol held steady in one hand. The Colt .45 was not glamorous. It was not sleek. It was heavy, loud, and brutal. Yet it silenced the laughter of those who mocked it. In foxholes and jungles, in alleys and tunnels, it dropped men cold with one shot, carving a legend deeper than propaganda. For Americans, it was trust in steel. For the Japanese, it was fear born from disbelief. And for history, it remains the sidearm that turned mockery into silence.